Joining me now is Robert McDonald, a retired supervisory Secret Service agent, and Donell Harvin, the former chief of Homeland Security and Intelligence for Washington, D.C. So, Bobby, let's talk about what focus there is on the Secret Service now. I'm going to just posit an excellent organization, a great agency, but certainly having to answer some questions in Congress and already this week about what happened with that rooftop. Or what do they need to do regarding the RNC?
Good afternoon, Andrea. Nice to be back with you again. Yeah, you're absolutely right. The questions are still out there with, as we talked about yesterday, with what happened, why it happened, how it happened, and how do we make sure it doesn't happen again. We need to allow the Secret Service to take a deep dive, as I said to you yesterday, to look at its situation and why this was allowed to happen, why we didn't find a way to mitigate that situation. You know, looking at that schematic again of that field where the event was, that building was incredibly close. You know, the sharpshooters are trained out to 1,000 yards, and that building was within a 200-yard area, and there was nothing there to mitigate what happened. And that's the big question here. Why, in that security plan and that review of the security plan before it's blessed off by a supervisor, did that question of that area not come up and not be able to present a positive mitigation to what happened here? Now, the questions are going to have to continue to be asked, and I think the director, you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong, is going up to Congress to brief Congress or brief some congressmen tomorrow with an open hearing next week. She's going to have to answer some very tough questions, and I hope that the Secret Service is ready to answer with some transparency and truthfulness as to what fell through the cracks here. Why are we having these questions that we're still talking about without really a resolution or a reason why that happened? This cannot happen. This is a serious, serious situation.
Yeah, and Jim Kavanaugh, formerly ATF, of course, earlier said you can't just say that it was the locals, state or local police. You can delegate to them, but you still have supervisory control and responsibility, basically.
Right. The buck stops with the Secret Service here. The Secret Service develops and implements the security plan in concert with local, state, and other federal partners. But the Secret Service is responsible for making sure that nothing slips through the cracks here on any of these visits by one of our protectees.
And Donell, NBC News has learned exclusively that the rooftop where the gunman was perched was identified days earlier by the Secret Service advance as a vulnerability. Last hour, former DHS Secretary Jeh Johnson called it a failure of communication. How should DHS be confronting this now?
Well, Bobby's spot on in his assessment, as he was yesterday. DHS is going to have to do a deep dive with the U.S. Secret Service. The problem is that we're in a very busy election cycle. And so I'm sure they will ratchet these things up for future rallies. There's a lot, I'm sure, coming up on the agenda. I wouldn't be too concerned about the RNC and DNC. As you were showing in the previous video, you see 8-foot non-scalable fences there. These events are handled as NSSCs, which are National Special Security Events. And so that's a whole different security posture, a whole lot of planning that goes into these things. I'm not quite sure of the level of planning and security that goes into a rally, but it's certainly not as much as the RNC and DNC. I do want to make a point that what should be concerning is that this kid graduated from high school 2 years ago. And so how does someone, by public accounts, no military training, no specific tactical training, how is someone able to penetrate a secure area, climb up on a rooftop, and come within 1 inch of ending a presidential candidate's life? And so if it's that easy, can you imagine if this was a determined, trained, and skilled adversary? This is what concerns me.
Yeah, he was a member of a shooting club, but that was it. And clearly there could have been some reconnaissance involved here. Nobody spotted that either. Donell, also, you oversaw intelligence in the response to the failures before January 6th and during. I want to ask you about that, about the ruling against the special counsel, Jack Smith, which could jeopardize all of those January 6th, the federal cases, the cases involving Donald Trump and what he did on January 6th.
Well, I'm not a legal analyst, luckily, but I have listened to other people who've come on. My biggest concern, and I'm on record on this, is that the individuals responsible at the very highest levels of government for January 6th and inciting that crowd to go down there and attack the U.S. Capitol, attack Capitol Police, attack D.C. Police would not be held accountable. And thus far, that's panned out, right? We've had the DOJ's done a great job with multiple convictions of individuals. Who knows if those are going to stand after the Supreme Court's ruling last month? But we still don't have those who are in charge at the higher levels. And so this is the concern that if this is going to be the new norm, right, political violence, so long as you can, get the courts to go your way, then we have a lot of dark days ahead of us.
Hey there, MSNBC fans. I'm Luke Russert, and be sure to join me, Rachel Maddow, Jen Psaki, Lawrence O'Donnell, Steve Kornacki, Joy Reid, and many more September 7th in Brooklyn, MSNBC Live Democracy 2024. Click on the link for ticket information. We will see you there.